Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you, and joined as we are every Friday during the season by senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell. Greg, good to have you with us. Welcome in. And I might be making more of this than I need to, but it's just very uncharacteristic in terms of what I have seen from the Patriots the last 4 weeks. And last week in particular in Miami. I don't know, maybe they're disinterested, maybe they're already thinking playoffs, whatever the case might be, Greg. Uncharacteristic mental errors from that team, execution errors, more than you're used to seeing from a Bill Belichick coach team, number one, especially in December when his teams are usually playing their best. What has the film said to you over their last 4 games?
Well, last week's game was clearly one of those games for certain. I did watch the tape on both sides of the ball in that game, so I can tell you that for certain. That did not have the look of a Patriots team really on either side of the ball. But I think, Chris, as you know, and Steve certainly knows this, that you have to be careful about those kinds of things. You'd have to expect the Patriots will be at their best mentally, physically, and tactically in this given game. And I don't think you can go into this any other way. Obviously, that's not a concern for Sean McDermott and staff, but I'm talking about from a fan and media perspective. No one knows how these games will play out. You can't go into a game assuming that a team is not going to play well.
Right, and despite, the injury report where they've got 13 guys that are questionable, the Bills have, 0.
I know, that's amazing.
Yeah, it seems I don't know. Bill Belichick has been accused of a lot of things, obviously, but gamesmanship with his injury report has been something that the media has rolled their eyes at all year. Who do you see as the guys on their injury report, perhaps, that may very well be difference makers if they're in or out?
Well, I have to tell you, Steve, I haven't even looked at their injury report. The only thing I noticed was that Jalen Mills went on COVID yesterday, but who else is on the injury report?
Well, Duggar didn't play last week, as you know.
Duggar, to me, let's start there. Because Duggar, and I did speak with someone who said he'll be somewhat questionable, so we don't know that as we speak right now. But I think he's a critical piece of their defense because at their core, they're a big nickel defense. That's been their foundation all season long. They play 3 safeties. Phillips and Duggar are essentially hybrid linebackers and safeties that can do a lot of different things. Duggar has been the tight end matchup all season long, so he has a specific role, and they're a team that does play a good percentage of man coverage, so that is a factor. And obviously McCourty tends to be their post safety because they're a predominant single high safety defense. So Duggar to me, and you can go through a few more names, Chris, but Duggar to me is a really important piece if he's missing.
Yeah, the other ones, Christian Barmore got injured last week. It's considered a minor knee injury. He's been limited all week in practice. Left tackle Isaiah Wynn looks like the most questionable. He's not only got a hip injury, he suffered an ankle injury last week, came out of the game, did not return. So Justin Haran would be the anticipated replacement there, as he was back in Week 4 and Week 5. And then the only other guy, Dante Hightower, Greg, missed. He was held out of last week's game, presumably to get healthier, but he's got a bum knee. We know he's not the fastest linebacker in the world to begin with. Now he's got a bum knee, and that thing's not going to feel so hot in 0 degrees.
No, I guess most things don't in 0 degrees, Chris, by the way.
Yeah.
He'd be an interesting player as well. It's funny you mentioned the O-line and how that will play out, because if you go back to that Week 16 game, obviously everybody spoke deservedly so about Josh Allen's performance. But as you guys probably both know, the defensive side of the ball was fascinating in that game as well. The Bills increased their blitz frequency rather significantly in that game, and they played far more man coverage in that game than had been their tendency throughout the season. They played both cover 1 with the single high safety, and they played a lot of snaps of 2-man coverage with 2 high safeties. So those were 2 things that came out of that Week 16 game. But the important point, if the offensive line is potentially a concern with Wynn being out, is now you have a backup if the Bills choose to pressure again, who's got to really do a lot of thinking through the looks and where the pressures might be coming from. And that's, so much about blitz and pressure has to do mentally. before the snap, understanding the look and where the pressure could be coming from.
One of the interesting things about the Bills' offense on the other side is that they've kind of gone with one tight end. They did have the fullback Reggie Gilliam in there as well sometimes, and actually Gilliam, we were talking earlier, has done a pretty good job in the run game in the blocking. But when they bring in Tommy Doyle as a tight end, one of the times they had Doyle outside of Dawson Knox on the end.
Yeah.
How has that, the fact that they've just said, we're just going to go with one tight end, and if we need to go three tights or two tight ends, we're going to bring a lineman in. How has that worked for Buffalo, and what benefits has it given them, if any?
Well, here's the question to me. Over the last 2-3 weeks, maybe not so much the New England game, but certainly Atlanta and this week, and obviously this week was a game they had to win, they have played a lot more with Doyle. Doyle played 18 snaps this past week. They had 18 snaps with 6 linemen, and obviously Gilliam played some snaps as well. So the question is, as you go into this given game, is this now going to be a meaningful feature? I don't know if significance is the right word. That might be too strong, but a meaningful feature, guys, of their offense. Are they going to try to go with the as we say, the XT, the extra tackle alignment and personnel package? Are they going to continue to try to run the ball? Or will, in a sense, they think along the lines the way they did week 16 and say, hey, this has to be a Josh Allen game and he needs to be great, which he was for the most part week 16. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you guys do, but I'm fascinated to see how the Bills come out offensively in this game.
Right. And if you want to take that a step further, I know we already addressed Duggar's availability, but Jalen Mills, if he does not come off the COVID list, they're down a starting corner. They're clearly not comfortable putting Jawan Williams outside against this Bills team because they had to in week 16 for like a snap or two, and they went at him right away, and Diggs just missed catching a touchdown pass. It bounced off his forearm when Jawan Williams was covering him. He came out of the game and was never seen again.
No, and I think Williams ultimately, in their mind, he's a 6'3", 220-pound guy. I think you could almost see him, if Duggar doesn't playing a lot of snaps and matching up to Dawson Knox. So that to me would be the matchup. I don't think they really want Williams on the outside against this wide receiving core.
Right, and that leaves us with what you think the overall philosophy is going to be. Now, if all things are considered,
you're not going to ask me what's in Bill Belichick's mind, Steve, are you? Because I would have no idea.
No, but what I'm saying is, if all things being considered, these two defenses almost a wash statistically. I mean, both very good against scoring points.
Right.
And it comes down to what you see as your best way to move the football. And generally speaking, the Bills are a passing team. If there's no wind, even if it's cold, they're going to be able to throw the football.
Without question.
And the Patriots are just the opposite of that. And I've made a bunch of analogies about what it's like for these two quarterbacks and what their teams are asking them to do. But basically, that's what it's going to come down to is, can the Bills run their offense the way they want, and can the Patriots run their offense exactly the way they want?
Yeah, and I think we know deep down that the Patriots are a running football team. They're in the top 10 in the league in almost every rushing category: attempts, yardage, yards per attempt. They want to run the ball, and I think they want to run it out of big people. And I think they'll want to see again what the Bills do defensively. Will the Bills put in that third linebacker, or will the Bills stay nickel? The Bills have put in that third linebacker when they've played New England this year. I think that's the way Bill Belichick would want to play this game. I think if the game were to play out exactly the way the Patriots want it to play out, then I think that, the numbers for Mac Jones would, be 15 for 22 for 152 yards. I don't think they really want Mac Jones having to drop back and throw unless the game truly demanded that. They want to throw proactively, not reactively. So I think you're going to see the fullback in the game, Jakob Johnson. I think you're going to see 6 offensive linemen. And if it's Haran starting at left tackle, it'll be Wenwu as the 6th offensive lineman, as he's been much of the year. That's the way I think they want to play, and almost the way I believe they have to play.
Right. But if the Bills can get off to an early start, a fast start, get some points on the board, it's going to put more of the burden on Mac Jones. I mean, that's really, as well as Josh Allen and the offense executed in that Week 16 game, once they got up by 10 points, now you're playing right into the hands of Buffalo's defense, because now you have to throw the ball. And add on top of that the fact that Buffalo's defense forced them into a lot of 3rd and longs. And I remember talking to you about this 3 weeks ago. If you get Mac Jones in 3rd and long, now he's got to hold the ball at extra half second. It can't come out as quick as it usually does. And now you got him right where you want him, right?
You do, and I think the Bills' pass rush has clearly gotten better over the last month of the season. So that's another factor in the game. But you didn't raise the point, but it led me to a point that I think comes from what you said, Chris, which is what will the Bills' offensive approach be? Because everybody might say, oh, they've got to be balanced, they've got to run the ball. Look what they've done the last number of weeks. But playing that way normally does not produce big early leads. Normally. So do the Bills take the approach that, hey, we want to come out really aggressive, throw the ball, hopefully get up, 14-0, 17-3, and make the game just what you said? Or do they go in the game with the idea that, hey, this is a really sound defense. Patriots are solid on D. While they might not have that one great pass rusher, this is a defense that's going to play well. That's not going to give us a lot. We're going to need to be a little more balanced because as great as Josh was week 16, can we expect that same thing again? I mean, we'd love to see it, obviously, but I mean, there were no sacks, no turnovers. I mean, that's about as perfect as you could ask for.
Yeah, and thinking back to that Week 16 of the way that game and the way it unfolded, you had a drop touchdown pass to Jake Kumaro. You had a drop touchdown pass on 4th and 1 to Emmanuel Sanders. You had a touchdown on the same drive as the Emmanuel Sanders drop. Right before it, you had a Dawson Knox touchdown called back because of a guy was a yard too deep. I mean, it was a half a step from a beatdown for the Buffalo Bills. They were lumping them up. What does that game say about the way these two teams can play? I mean, it seems that the Bills have got some weapons that the Patriots don't have an answer for.
No, and because it's Bill Belichick and the Patriots, we always stop and pause and say, hey, he'll have something that's going to be different. We just don't know what it is because, hey, I'm not as smart as Belichick, so I don't know what it is, but it will be different. So the question is that different thing that he has, is that going to slow it down? But you're correct. I mean, that game could have been 45-14. Maybe the Bills are just that much better than New England. And maybe that game in Orchard Park, the win game was just a fluky game because of the weather. Who knows? Maybe the Week 6 game is more like what the teams are. We don't know that. And I guess this game will tell us a lot as to what it really is. But I'm so curious to see what Bill Belichick's approach is defensively, because in that Week 16 game, the Bills really dominated against the Patriots' man coverage, which, by the way, they have not been as good overall this year against man coverage as they were a year ago in 2020. But in that game, they were really, really good against man coverage.
Right. And then taking that a step further, Greg, the Week 16 game, the Bills entered without Cole Beasley and Gabriel Davis. Obviously, Isaiah McKenzie had a giant game against Miles Bryant. They never really changed their approach defensively to McKenzie, and he ate him alive. Put your Brian Daboll hat on here. Now you have Davis and Beasley at your disposal. What kind of role does McKenzie play in the scope of the offense, having two guys ahead of him in the pecking order now back in the lineup?
Well, here's the way I would view this. If you anticipate a lot of man coverage, and as the game starts, you see that they're playing a good amount of man, to me, McKenzie becomes a big factor, because I think one of the things that you love about McKenzie is the motion element. Because what does motion give you, Steve, as you well know, is motion almost always gives you free access off the ball. And McKenzie has such immediate quickness off the ball that you want to use him in motion to defeat man coverage. I mean, a couple of their big third down plays week 16 resulted from him going into motion. And therefore, I think a 3rd and 10, it might have been in the third quarter, was the result of motion. And then, he's able to get into his route immediately with speed and velocity. So to me, that's where McKenzie's valuable. McKenzie and Beasley are totally different players. So I think there's a place for McKenzie if the Patriots do play a lot of man coverage.
Right, and one of the things, and I don't know if you can remember back how the game started out in that Week 16 game in Foxborough, Josh really seemed not to be looking down the field. He took some check downs, short, easy throws, and I think that really got them off to the fact that And in that game, none of their drives didn't get inside the Patriot 20-yard line. I moved the ball at will, but it started with short, easy completions from Josh Allen, mostly to Devin Singletary to begin that game. And it really set a tone for the entire way that offense went.
You know, it's funny you say that because I pulled up my notes, because I take detailed notes on every game I watch. Here's the note that I typed. What stood out on the Bills' first possession, and it continued throughout the game, was Allen's willingness to take the check down and get 5, 8, 10, 12 yards when it was there. Don't force throws. Don't try to make something happen. Don't get sacked or make a negative play. Take the running opportunity if it presents itself. Play smart and move the chains. And that's exactly what he did. And, and actually I thought his mindset in that was really important because he's got a big play mentality and always thinks he can make a big play.
Right. The game that is going to be played before this one, Greg, is Cincinnati and Las Vegas in Cincinnati. And a lot is being made of the Raiders' pass rush and how it could get to Burrow more than just occasionally.
Yeah.
My counter to that would be this, Greg. Cincinnati hasn't had great protection all season, and it doesn't seem to matter.
Well, these teams played Week 11, and that game is not being looked at by a lot of people, Chris. And in that game, Burrow had 20 completions for less than 150 yards.
Okay.
And their longest pass completion in that game was 17 yards. And he was under duress in that game a lot. And it was one of the few games this year. Now, I think he's gotten better and better as the season's progressed. But that was one of the few games this year where Joe Burrow started to anticipate and perceive pressure. And their O-line is not very good in one-on-one pass protection, as you said. And you're right, it's been that way all year. So that is a fascinating component of the matchup. There's no answer. We don't know till they play, but it's certainly a fascinating component.
What do you think the most fascinating game of the weekend is, of the 6 games that are going to take place? Is there one that you think, man, I got to watch this game because
Well, besides this one, because the two that we did full segments on in the matchup show were Buffalo, New England, and Dallas, San Francisco. So we kind of felt those two were the most interesting tactical games of the weekend. Although I do personally believe, I don't know what you guys think, I actually think Philly-Tampa could be very interesting because I think that Philly gun run game with Jalen Hurts and Hurts with design runs, I think that's going to be a little more difficult for Tampa to defend than people think. Tampa's run defense, which everybody just now says, oh, they're great. They have not been anywhere near as good this year as they were a year ago.
Philadelphia, Steve and I have been kind of keeping a casual eye on them. Their run game, best in the league. They have like 7 or 8 games with 175 rushing yards. And I understand Jalen Hurts is a part of that.
They tied the 1985 Bears with 7 consecutive games of 175 or more rushing yards. And one of those games was with Gardner Minshew, and a couple were with Jalen Hurts with a bum ankle where they didn't really feature the quarterback design run game, which my sense is you'll see 10 quarterback design runs this week.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is.
Greg, thanks for the time. As always,
Thanks,
enjoy
Greg.
the games this weekend. We know you'll be glued to the television, and then you'll be in your office watching all of them on Monday.
And I'll be glued to the flagpole with my tongue or something.
Yes, Steve, stay warm, Steve, if that's even humanly possible.
All right.
Take care, Greg. Thanks for the time.
See you guys.